room is on the second floor of our house. Last Sunday, around 1 a.m, I was in bed reading some comics when I heard some voices out the front of our house. It sounded like 4 or 5 old guys and 2 old ladies, and they were all shouting their opinions and arguing with each other about something. It was like they were about to get into a fight. We live on a countryside road that people barely even use during the day, so I found it incredibly strange that so many people would be out there at this late hour. What on earth were they arguing about, I thought. But then the noise seemed to suddenly warp to the hallway at the bottom of the stairs, inside our house. What? Guests at this hour? But I couldn't be bothered getting up, so I ignored them and kept reading my comics. But then, suddenly, there was a loud noise above my head, and I heard a guy shout something like, "Shouldn't you be asleep already?" I was so surprised that I jumped out of bed, but nobody was there. Hey guys, I'm your host, Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to this week's episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. The latest volume of Kowabana, volume 16, is now available. If you want even more creepy tales of ghosts, haunted buildings, curses, mysterious rituals, and much more, make sure to check it out right now. And if you're looking for more to listen to, you can also find the audiobook for Sumikowa, The Haunting of Higanbana Heights, either on our Patreon, Fourth Wall store, or various audiobook outlets, including Spotify and Audible. So don't miss out on that either if you're still looking for more. This week, we're looking at some creepy stories related to voices. Voices that, for some reason or another, our storytellers shouldn't be hearing. First up, 2 boys decide to take their bikes for a little exploring, but when some poor weather strikes, they find themselves lost in the mountains. What exactly is it that they find out there? And will they ever be able to escape from it again? Find out in Cassette Tape in the Abandoned House. I heard this story from a friend of mine. I'll call him Takao. So this friend, he had a strange habit of staring at the TV screen whenever there was information about some incident that caused injury. He was checking the names of the suspects and such. Even when we went drinking, he was always busy watching the news on TV, to the point where I often made fun of him about it. What? Are you scared a friend might have been arrested or something? Well, you might not believe me, but... He then told me the story of something that happened to him in the 6th grade. This story might get a little lengthy, just like this intro, and maybe it's not so scary either, but please, bear with me. Takao was an elementary school student in the countryside, right around the time that CDs were starting to replace cassette tapes. However, Takao's family weren't exactly wealthy, and he wasn't exactly up to date with the latest trends. So he was perfectly happy with the old portable cassette player his father had given him. He had a bag that he slung over his right shoulder that hung down to his left hip, and he often put the player in that when he went out to play. He'd also gotten a bicycle around the same time, so he liked to ride around while listening to music. However, once he got told off for doing so because it was dangerous, so he stopped after that. One day, Takao's classmate, Yosuke, told him that he also got a new bike. "Takao, you have a bike too, right? We should go for a ride somewhere." Takao was excited as well, and so, with his beloved bag on, the two set out around midday one Sunday for a ride. "Yosuke, where do you want to go?" "We should go somewhere we've never been before." They chose a country road they rarely used, and then started pedaling. They didn't know where they were going or how they'd get there. But as evening approached, they finally reached a mountain pass and entered a mountain road. They were at an age where they loved exploring. They put their bikes down next to an animal trail, then started pushing their way through the brush. They were hoping they could find a secret hideout, like the one they had in the forest back home. But they didn't have a lot of time, and before long, the sun set and the mountains were covered in darkness. Oh no! Takao felt a raindrop fall on his forehead. It was starting to rain. It wasn't heavy, but it wasn't light either. The pair picked up the pace, looking for the way back but being careful not to fall. However, in the darkness, the animal trails were indistinguishable from the brush. They both brought along a small penlight they got for free with a science magazine they both read, and they used those to light their way. However, they couldn't find where they'd left their bikes, so they instead started walking downhill in hopes of finding the bottom of the mountain. But they went down and up and down again, to the point where they had lost all sense of direction. Sobs mingled with Takao's breathing. "Yosuke, where are we?" "I don't know. Guess we're lost." Yosuke's breathing was also laboured. As they continued walking, they came across some old pink tape. They were relieved to find something man-made, but it looked like it had been put there long ago, and the end of it had snapped and was lying on the ground. The pair grew even more despondent and rushed ahead. Whether they liked it or not, the rain was making them even more exhausted. Ow! Suddenly, Yosuke cried out from between some trees. Seemed there was a thin rope tied between them, and it had hit his forehead. Yet it didn't snap, and in the darkness, it continued further than they could see. A bad feeling washed over Takao. Between this and the earlier tape, it was like they were entering a forbidden area with barbed wire fencing. However, Yosuke's sudden scream cut short his thoughts. "Takao! Look!" Takao looked in the direction he was pointing, and he could faintly see several houses that appeared to be cut out of the mountainside. Without hesitation, the pair rushed towards them. But they soon realized something. The houses were all empty. The area looked like the remains of a long-abandoned village. "This is creepy," Takao muttered as he reached for one of the sliding doors. Then he opened it. "The door's unlocked, Yosuke. We can go inside." Looking around, the place looked pretty old, with a dirt floor and tatami mats scattered here and there. It was also terribly dusty, making them cough. Still, they could shelter from the rain here, so they went inside, took off their shirts, and wrung the water from them. As the droplets fell, dust flew into the air. They shone their lights around the house. It was an old wooden 2-story house, and it was honestly pretty big too. Outside the window, they could see a ladder attached to the house. Looked like it was built so that you could access the second floor directly from the outside. For now, they were just relieved to have escaped being lost in the mountains. And with that out of the way, there was only one thing left for boys their age to do. "Takao, let's explore the house." They split up and searched the entire house, finding several large rooms, a large bedroom, and what appeared to be a children's room as well. Yet there was almost no furniture in the house, so it looked like whoever lived here had long moved out. Being that the front door wasn't even locked, they no doubt took everything of value with them when they left. The bathroom was basically falling apart, and the old-fashioned wash basin had completely dried up too. It was a decidedly old-looking house. "Oh, what? There's no water?" Yosuke said. Looking around, they discovered the tap in the kitchen had been removed as well, so there was no way for them to get any water. Well, It had no doubt been turned off long ago anyway. The sound of raindrops hitting the roof echoed inside. There were no lights, so all they could rely on was their small pen lights and their naked eyes that had adjusted to the darkness. As Takao walked down the hall, he kicked something small. Picking it up, it appeared to be a green paper box, just a little smaller than a box of cigarettes. There was a round logo on it, alongside what appeared to be the company's name. Something God, something medicine. The characters for God and medicine were old-fashioned characters with lots of strokes, but the other parts had faded away, and he couldn't read what it said. The box was incredibly light, but still, he opened it to see if anything was inside. As he thought, it was empty. If the characters for God and medicine were there, did that mean that maybe this was medicine for someone's nerves? He knew that word used the same character as God, too. It appeared to be the box for some sort of ointment or tube, rather than some sort of pills. Finding it rather boring, he threw the box away and looked down the hallway again. This time, he noticed a single cassette tape on the ground. Suddenly, he was curious about what he might hear on such an old tape. Something was handwritten on the label, but it was dirty and messier than Takao's own handwriting, so he couldn't read it. Raindrops continued to echo on the roof. Takao took his portable tape player out of his wet bag, wiped it on his shirt, put the tape in, then pressed play. White noise filled the air as he waited for a song to play. But rather than a song, he instead heard a person's voice. Takao thought that tapes were just for music, so he was shocked. It sounded like a recording of a conversation between a mother and daughter. "Hey, Mama, what are they?" The girl's voice sounded pained and hard to make out, and while her mother appeared to be answering her, Takao couldn't hear her voice at all. While it was hard to make out what she was saying, the girl was probably saying something like, "Hey, what should we do? I don't like it. I'm not a good girl. The ladder has been taken down, you know?" Ladder? He thought she was talking about that ladder they'd seen outside just before, but then he saw one lying on the ground at the end of the hall. Was it that ladder? There was a square shape in the ceiling above it. It wasn't very large, but if he used the ladder, a single person should be able to fit through it. He also couldn't see any stairs, so this had to be how people got upstairs. The sound of raindrops on the roof echoed again. It was then that Takao realized the sound he was hearing wasn't raindrops hitting the roof. The sound was coming from right above him. Instinctively, he went to find Yosuke. He could see him in the living room rummaging through a broken cupboard. Of course, on the first floor, which meant to. If that wasn't the sound of the rain, then that meant someone was above them right now. With his earphones still in, Takao ran to the living room. "Hey, Yosuke! Somebody's upstairs!" "Eh? Seriously?" Yosuke looked up at the ceiling like a kid who'd just found a fun new toy to play with. "I'm gonna go up through here," he said, placing the ladder against the hole in the ceiling. "I don't think you should. It might be dangerous. Maybe it's a robber or something." "Why on earth would a robber be here right now?" "Come on, you come too," Yosuke said. Then he climbed through the hole to the second floor. No, I'm not going, Takao said. He was curious, but he was more creeped out than anything else. With nothing else to do, he pressed play on the tape again. What should we do? Since they weren't really having a proper conversation, he still couldn't tell what they were talking about. This person won't go. Well, that's probably the best. Something about their conversation struck him as very weird. However, before he could figure out what they were talking about, a flash of lightning lit up outside the window. A few seconds later, heavy thunder rumbled through the old house. It seemed to shake through each piece of blackened timber, and then it passed. However, even after the lightning passed, Takao still trembled. When the thunder rumbled, he heard that exact same sound, coming from his earphones. And then he realized why the conversation felt so weird. Who was this person? It sounded like they were talking about someone right in front of them. Who were they talking about? This person won't go. Go where? Up to the second floor? No way. They weren't talking about... That creepy feeling Takao had changed into fear. He removed the earphones from his ears and then called to the second floor. Yosuke! Yosuke! Let's get out of here! I don't want to be here anymore! But there was no reply. He must have gone all the way to the rear of the second floor. Takao had no choice but to climb the ladder and go up there himself. It was then that he realized that the ladder wasn't meant to be pulled up to the second floor. When he tried, it got stuck in the hole and wouldn't fit. Looking around the unexpectedly large second floor, Takao called out Yosuke's name. With how small the entrance was, he expected it to look like a storage room or something, but it wasn't like that at all. And the building materials looked newer than the first floor. Maybe it was an extension at some point. Oddly, for an old house, it had a simple bath, a poor excuse for a kitchen, and a toilet. This appeared to lead to a tank outside. It was set up so someone could live up here without needing to go downstairs. There appeared to be 3 rooms in total. One of them was a cramped Japanese-style room without doors, so by shining his penlight inside, Takao could immediately see Yosuke wasn't there. He opened the door to another room and shone his light around. This room was completely different. It was around 6 tatami mats large, and in the center of the wooden floor was a bed frame made of pipes that seemed entirely out of place. There were dark stains all over the floor, and lighter stains on the blanket covering the bed too. Maybe it was mold. However, he couldn't bring himself to go closer to check it. The atmosphere in this room already felt heavier than the others. There was no storage in there either, and of course, he couldn't see Yosuke anywhere. The last room had a large window facing the outside, or rather, a glass door. Beyond it, he could occasionally see lightning lighting up the clouds. It appeared this used to be a children's room, as he spotted some toys, old comics, and a study desk with a few materials left behind. Although he couldn't see an old red school bag anywhere, he guessed this was a girl's room. Was it the girl he heard on the tape just before? Just thinking it made him shiver. The visibility was also poor in this room, and there was so much stuff that he couldn't see the corners very well. Yosuke, Are you here? Are you hiding? No response. All he heard was a faint rustling sound, like a mouse or the house creaking, or maybe the trees moving outside. It highlighted just how quiet this house really was. Almost all of the useful furniture from the first floor was gone, but daily necessities were still all over the second. And on the wall, he spotted a picture, no doubt drawn by the young girl who lived here. Two people were, for some reason, wearing the same clothes, but it was drawn by a child after all, so... On that note, there were a few dishes in that kitchen area before, although you could barely call it a kitchen really. It was like the first and second floors were two different houses. With that on his mind, he approached the glass door and looked down. Judging by the direction of it, that ladder they saw outside earlier should be right beneath it. Even though this second floor was rather spacious, the fact Yosuke still hadn't responded to his calls yet made him think he was no longer here. He must have gone outside using the ladder here, Takao thought. He opened the glass door and noticed a small veranda-like protrusion. So this was a second entrance, huh? Hey, Yosuke, are you down there? But before he could stop himself, another word escaped his lips. What? Beneath the overhang, a rotten ladder that was bent in the middle leaned against the old house. He hadn't realized it looked like that when he saw it downstairs. There was no way anyone could use it in that state. His expectations so thoroughly betrayed, Takao was shaken to his core. So where on earth was Yosuke then? Feeling even more helpless than before, it was like he'd been left alone on a deserted island. What on earth is going on? He froze on the spot and broke out in a cold sweat. In the silence between lightning strikes, he heard a noise coming out of his earphones. He didn't want to listen to it anymore. He should turn it off. Taking the player out of his bag, he went to remove the tape. But as he went to push the open button, he realized something. Even though the tape was apparently still going, the tape itself wasn't moving. The on light was also off. The batteries should still have plenty of juice left in them, but looking closer, water was dripping out of the seams. Seemed it got soaked in his bag. So, when did it stop working? With trembling hands, he grabbed the cord and put the earphones back in his ears. Mama, Tomoe-chan is angry. The tape wasn't moving. Takao couldn't remember it, but he no doubt let out a horrifying scream. I've got to get out of here. This place is dangerous. When he turned around, a figure was hiding beside the bookcase in the child's room. He was huddled over with his back to him, but it was Yosuke. He was hiding, so he hadn't noticed him. Seemed he no longer had his penlight with him either. Yosuke, why didn't you answer me? Let's get out of here. It's itchy. So itchy, Yosuke said, moving like he was scratching something. Come on, get up, Takao said, grabbing Yosuke's shoulders and turning him around. Yosuke was scratching his own face. The skin was torn and bleeding everywhere, yet Yosuke continued scratching it. What are you doing? Stop it! It's itchy. It's so itchy. Do. Do. He then sensed someone behind them. Turning around, he saw a girl around the same age as them standing in the middle of the room. Her clothes were tattered and old. Takao screamed before he could stop himself. The girl was looking at the ground, so he couldn't see her face. However, there was something not right about her. Sound continued to flow from his earphones. Someone was saying something. Is this voice you? Takao asked, his voice trembling. The girl didn't respond. Takao put the earphones to his ears again. Not me. Her. Tomoe. Her voice sounded even further away than before. Angry. You shouldn't hear. Suddenly, another voice cut in, and at that exact same moment, the girl looked up. Her face was covered in bright red scratches. It was like she had constantly picked at the scabs over and over again, and those scabs were all covered in blood. Yet her expression was one of anger itself, and as soon as their eyes met, Takao returned to his senses. Ah! Ah! He grabbed Yosuke as he screamed and ran from the room. He immediately ran into the bed, and as he tried to turn around, he froze in his tracks. Someone was sitting on the bed. I'm sorry. He didn't know why, but Takao apologized with a tearful voice. It wasn't the girl from before, but rather someone much older. She appeared to be a woman, and she also appeared to be mad. He couldn't see her eyes in the darkness, but he could tell from the direction of her face that she was looking right at him, and he at her. He was scared. Takao froze on the spot. To. Footsteps approached from behind, and Takao came back to his senses. He grabbed Yosuke again, dragging him towards the ladder. He wanted to know where the girl was, but he couldn't bring himself to look back. But she was close. Very close. To. A feeble scream escaped Takao's lips as he desperately dragged Yosuke behind him. As soon as he thought the girl was within reach, they finally reached the ladder. He pushed Yosuke into the hole. The ladder was slanted, so he seemed to roll down it at a slight angle before hitting the floor. He made a loud thud as he landed, but there was no time to think about whether he might be injured or not. Crying, Takao then climbed down the hole himself. He was panicking, so he went head first, even knowing it was dangerous, but he had no time to go down feet first. Just as his entire body was almost through the hole, he felt a pain shoot through his ankle. His body jerked with fear, and the impact sent him tumbling through the hole. Both he and the ladder fell, and with an even louder thud than Yosuke, he hit the ground. Landing on his back, he struggled to breathe. They had to run. She was going to catch them, and yet his body refused to move. But there was no sign of footsteps following them. Luckily, he didn't drop his penlight even whilst dragging Yosuke, so he used that to light the way. But beyond the dark entrance was even more darkness. The layout of this house meant that if the ladder inside was down, then nobody would be able to come down from the second floor. Would the thing he saw try to follow him down the hole? At any rate, after checking that he wasn't injured, Takao grabbed Yosuke and dragged him out of the house. His foot hit that medicine box he tossed earlier, so he kicked it on his way past. Outside, it was still raining. Takao located the house furthest away from this one, then laid Yosuke down on the veranda with a small roof above it. Then, a fierce fatigue and exhaustion washed over him. No, he couldn't sleep. What would happen if he did and that thing followed them? But he also couldn't stop his eyes from closing. If he heard that sound, he'd run. To, to, to. Those footsteps. His consciousness began to fade. Those footsteps. He mustn't hear them. Those footsteps. Steps. When he came back to, it was morning. The heavy rain was also now just a light drizzle. When he woke up Yosuke, he yawned. His face was covered in welts. Ow! What the hell? You did that to yourself. Yosuke barely remembered anything after going upstairs. I did this to myself? What the hell? That's scary. I was the one who was scared. Takao then told Yosuke about what happened to him. Now, it all felt like a dream, so the words flowed freely from his lips. He even embellished it a little. Thanks for not abandoning me then, huh? Well, we are friends after all. As their surroundings got brighter, so did their manner of speaking. Takao, let's go back down the mountain now. Our parents are going to kill us. Takao nodded and stood up. As they walked in the sunlight, the previous day's events seemed like a bad dream. Even that house just looked like a regular dirty house in the morning sun, and it seemed smaller too. Takao started to think that maybe it really was all just a bad dream. Ah, Takao, did you do that to yourself too? Yosuke pointed to his ankle. There were 3 bright red scratch marks on it. Takao's scream echoed throughout the tiny village. After that, the boys were lucky enough to find their bikes, and then they rode home. When they got back, their parents let them have it. Later that day, Takao played the tape that was still in his portable player on the radio cassette player at home. It was a recording of a children's choir. That muttering voice from earlier wasn't anywhere on it. Being that whatever happened in that village seemed to happen quite some time ago, Takao was pretty curious about what it might have been, but there was no way for him to look into it. He didn't even know the exact location of it. What happened to the girl and her mother that he heard in his earphones? What about their family? And those people living on the second floor who were effectively isolated? Why was that house even built with such a layout to begin with? Who was that girl on the bed? And what about the girl with all those scars on her face? The scratches on his ankle healed a few days later. But now, the only thing Takao remembers from that house is the word Tomoe, which sounded like a girl's name. He has no idea how old she might be now, but chances are high that she is already dead. Either way, it was unlikely she had a normal life regardless. And that's why, whenever he sees a violent crime on TV, even now, Takao unconsciously checks the names of everyone involved. Supposing the name Tomoe appeared as a suspect, of course, chances are good that it wouldn't be the same one as the girl from that house. I know that, Takao said, but it's just a habit at this point, or like something I've conditioned myself to do, you know? He picked up a now cold piece of fish with his chopsticks. He seemed to know more than he was letting on, so I asked him, "Hey, Do you really not know anything that happened in that house in the past? You really didn't look into it out of curiosity? I don't know. Anyway, it was all like a dream, honestly. Something about his words didn't ring true. Did he really know something? Maybe he was trying not to say something he shouldn't. And that injury on my ankle, maybe I really did do that to myself. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know anything about that medicine either. It all happened so long ago. Having said that, Takao ordered another snack. And finally this week, a man visits a nearby mountain to plot a hiking route for some locals, but while there, stumbles across something he really shouldn't have. What is hiding on the mountain, and what does it really want? Find out in Voice in the Bushes. This summer, I had my first truly scary experience. At first, I couldn't even imagine telling anyone about it, but now that things have calmed down a little, let me write about it here. My family home is deep in the mountains of the Chugoku region. I belong to a small nature preservation club there, and through it I took part in various events and such. There was a mountain by the name of Mount So-and-so, about a 20-minute drive from our house, and our club members usually went there to go camping, mountain climbing, and other such activities. One day, a member suggested that we try to recruit some locals from the area and use the club members as guides for the mountain. The idea was to promote the charms of the mountain and the beauty of nature to the locals. I agreed with the plan and ended up making the preparations for the event. I had to get the necessary equipment and select the route for guiding. I've climbed this mountain countless times over the years, so I was pretty familiar with it. But on my next day off, I decided to head over and actually walk the route by myself to check it out. The weather was great, and it was a perfect day for climbing. With my digital camera in hand, I took various photos that I could use in the guide pamphlet, and honestly, just enjoyed the walk. When I was around halfway to my destination, I stopped by a rest area with some spring water, and the sky started to darken. I considered turning back, but the plan was to go even higher on the day of the event. I grabbed my stuff and figured I'd walk a little further, and then, if the weather looked to be getting worse, I'd turn back. Suddenly, I heard a noise. It sounded like a person, I thought, as I looked around. I was on a regular trail, so it wasn't like it would be weird to run into anyone out here. But there wasn't anyone in front of or behind me. Maybe it was just the wind, I thought, but as soon as I started walking, I heard it again. The sound was coming from the bushes just off to the side of the hiking trail. It was a small, faint voice. I couldn't tell whether it was coming from a man or a woman. "Is anyone there?" Thinking someone might be injured, I called out. But there was no response. After hesitating for a moment, I decided to head into the bushes. Maybe I was just hearing things, and if so, that would be fine. But just in case someone really was in need of help, I wanted to check. "Is anyone here?" I called out louder this time as I proceeded. The bushes were large enough to hide a small person, so if someone was lying injured on the ground, it would be hard to find them. As I pushed my way through, paying careful attention to my surroundings, suddenly I found myself in an open space. I'd never seen this place before. The dense bushes suddenly disappeared, and instead I saw a damp plot of land spotted with trees. Sacred rope or something seemed to be tied around them, and in the middle of all these trees was what appeared to be an old wooden shed that was falling apart. It looked like a shed you might see at any old house, but as I stood there, speechless, looking at it for a few moments, again I heard that voice. It brought me back to my senses. That voice was coming from the shed. It was definitely a person. I had to check. Or so I thought, but then a bad feeling washed over me. First of all, what the hell was this place? I had no idea it even existed. I'd climbed this mountain countless times, yet I'd never even heard of a place like this before. The trees blocked most of the sunlight, making the area rather dim and creepy. But still, I wasn't imagining that voice. I had to see who it was. However, I didn't want to announce my presence, so, holding my breath, I tiptoed quietly over to the shed. As soon as I got there, I was filled with regret. The shed had a door, but it was covered in old talismans. They were probably white once, but from a distance they looked almost the same brown as the door, so I didn't really see them. There was also a padlock, but it was broken, perhaps from age, and it was just hanging there. As such, the door was open a little. I heard a voice inside. I was about ready to burst into tears. Like, just think about it. I was terrified. It was just like a horror movie. I wanted to run away from there as fast as I could. But on the other hand, my mind tried to rationalize it. Ghosts and monsters didn't exist. Maybe it was just a homeless person, or someone who got lost on the mountain and injured themselves and had taken shelter here. Yes, I really should just check, right? I told myself. After debating what to do, I decided to check. I reached out for the door handle and gave it a sharp push. It creaked as dust flew into the air all around. Looking inside, there was a person. They were in the middle of the room with their back to me. It was a woman. She was no doubt wearing a kimono, but it looked like nothing more than a tattered white rag. Her hair, streaked with grey, was a mess and stretched down to her waist. Her arms and legs poking out from beneath the tattered kimono were horribly thin, and at her feet lay the remains of a dog or a tanuki or something. Fresh dark blood pooled on the floor. The woman was muttering something. A song? I couldn't hear it, but it seemed to have a steady rhythm to it. Well, this is no good, I thought, feeling oddly calm as I stared at the strange scene in front of me. I had seen something I shouldn't have. Gotten involved with something I shouldn't have. I should run. As I took a step back, the woman's body trembled and her head started shaking back and forth. She trembled and quivered and shook. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Her movements grew more wild, and her long hair flew all around the place. I had no idea what she was trying to say, but it was all too weird. I ran. I ran all the way back to the hiking trail. There was probably no expression on my face at the time. I turned all thoughts and feelings off as I ran. It was like if I had even the slightest thought, or made the slightest noise, then the thin thread holding my sanity together would snap. Perhaps it was my instincts keeping me from panicking. I pushed through the bushes and returned to the trail. As I stopped to catch my breath, I turned back and, about 20 meters into the bushes, I saw a black head appear. I froze. I could only see the head, but the grey streaks let me know it was the same woman from before. She seemed to be standing still, but Did she follow me all this way? I took off running immediately back down the trail. Turning to look back as I ran, I saw a white kimono by the shade of the trees next to the trail. She was closer than before. I ran and ran. Then I turned back. That white kimono in the trees. She was even closer than before. A horrible scream escaped my lips. It might be easier to understand if you think of it as like a game of statues. Every time I turned back, she was even closer than before. I was running as fast as I could, but when I turned around, she was even closer, and she showed no signs that she had been running with me. I was about to reach the village at the foot of the mountain, and when I turned back again, this time she was about 3 meters behind me. For just a moment, I saw her face. Her eyes were hidden behind the hair stuck to her face, but her mouth was moving. Turning back to the front, I continued running. I no longer had the courage to turn back. I feared that the next time I did, she would be right behind me. Struggling to breathe, I ran into the village and went straight for the first house I saw. I pressed the doorbell over and over like a madman. Someone, please! As I was panicking, an elderly woman came out of the house. What on earth? What's wrong? She looked surprised when she saw me. Of course she did. A grown man was struggling to breathe on her front doorstep. I'm sorry, but, is there anything behind me right now? I don't see anything. Nervously, I turned around. That woman wasn't there. That was my experience. I thought about telling the others at the club about it, but I was too scared to. Naturally, I refused to attend the event at Mount So-and-so as well. I wonder what on earth it was that I saw. At first, I was too scared to look into it, but now that things have calmed down a little, I'm thinking I might look into it a little more next year. A massive thank you and shout out to this week's Cummy tier members, Scarly and Emerald. It's thanks to your support, along with everyone else, that I'm able to keep doing this show, so thank you very much. Don't forget to check out Kowabana Volume 16, out right now, and check out our merchandise store at kowabana-shop.fourthwall.com. And if you'd like to chat about this week's stories, come and join us in the Kowabana Discord. You can find that link in the description or on kowabana.net. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/TaraADevlin for exclusive bonus stories and extras, or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/KowabanaJapan for all sorts of Japanese horror you won't find anywhere else. Thanks guys, stay safe, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.